there's still a lot of investigation to do, but it seems highly likely that Prigozhin is dead and that everyone on that plane is dead. Now, you were on this show during the so-called attempted coup where Prigozhin led several thousand, I think it was up to 8,000 Wagner troops in a mutiny against Russia, against Moscow, against the defense ministry. And now this happened. I think it was almost exactly, what was it, 3 months, 2 months since the strike that the Wagner forces led by Prigozhin conducted against Russia's air defense forces, leading to, I think, the death of 12 Russian Air Force men. Could you talk about the significance of this? What are your thoughts about it? How should we be thinking about this? There's a lot of information that we obviously do not know, but your initial thoughts and what you've been thinking about since this occurred.
Well, I mean, I think if people go back to June 23rd, 24, I clearly said that what Prigozhin and Utkin is his senior military commander, the founder of Wagner, did was treason. They carried out an armed insurrection against the constitutionally mandated government of Russia. While they claimed that they weren't targeting Putin, they were seeking to forcefully create change at the Ministry of Defense and at the chairman of the chiefs of staff for the general staff of Russia. It's treason, straight up treason. Putin called it out. He said they betrayed us, stab in the back. It's treason. That makes Prigozhin a traitor to Russia. It makes Utkin a traitor to Russia. It makes any commander who was witting of what was transpiring a traitor to Russia. So we need to just knock off this other, this stuff that's going around about it wasn't really a coup. It was a false flag. It was a straight up insurrection, armed insurrection that resulted in people dying. It wasn't a game. It wasn't theater. It was as real as it gets. It was a desperate act carried out by a desperate man leading a desperate organization that had lost its funding from the Ministry of Defense. Their contract expired on 1 May 2023. They were in the midst of a battle for Bakhmut that the Russian Ministry of Defense never wanted to fight. The battle for Bakhmut was initiated by Wagner for the purpose of ensuring that Wagner was in a high-profile fight that Wagner would then spin in the media as being the most significant fight of the war, Wagner being the most heroic troops. And I'm not saying that the fight wasn't significant. I'm not saying that Wagner troops weren't heroic. It was a significant fight. They were heroic. But this was a fight that didn't need to happen, shouldn't have happened only because Prigozhin was desperate to carry out a public relations campaign designed to overturn the decision of the Ministry of Defense that said Wagner can no longer operate on Russian soil as a private military contractor because common law 249 or 279 or whatever it is says you can't do that. And it's straight up. Prigozhin was out of control, literally out of control. And when it happened, I said he's a dead man walking. Now, I said that before Putin pardoned him and pardoned the Wagner people. But, there was conditions on the pardoning. One, that Wagner would disband in Ukraine. They did. Disarmed, gave up their weaponry, and left. And two, that Prigozhin and the senior commanders would go to Belarus and start a new life. But there's other things that happened. What's interesting is, and a lot of people haven't picked up on this, but it's an important fact. Vladimir Putin invited Prigozhin and 35 of Wagner's top commanders to the Kremlin, I believe on June 29th, which would be literally 5 days after the insurrection ended. And he had a conversation with them. And according to the Kremlin readout, it was a frank and open conversation, during which time Putin made clear that he didn't want Prigozhin to be the head of Wagner anymore. He didn't want Wagner to be an independent entity anymore. And he pretty much said, I want you to pick, I think it's a guy named Troshin, codename Greyhead, chief of staff of Wagner. He said, I want him to be the head of Wagner. And I want all of you to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense to bring Wagner into legal norms with Russia. And the majority of the Wagner commanders said, yep, we're on board. And Prigozhin vetoed it, said no. Prigozhin and Utkin and a handful of others said, nope, we're not doing that. That's a big deal, especially when the Russian president comes out in July and says, I told Prigozhin I didn't want him to be the commander anymore or the director anymore. And he named Troshin. He said, I want him to be the guy. The Russian president is putting markers down, saying this ain't going to happen. Another thing that was happening, too, is the Ministry of Defense was making a move to bring Wagner to heel. All of the businesses that Wagner was involved in, and understand it's a private military company that goes abroad and enters into, it sort of goes in on the coattails of the Ministry of Defense, who sends a defense liaison team. They meet with their colleagues, or the people that they're working with, their collaborators in the government. It's government to government, and then they say, and the people that will be handling the training and everything is Wagner. Let me bring Wagner in. And then Wagner has the green light to work with that country on whatever funding mechanism they want to. They are under contract to the Ministry of Defense. We now know this, that for any of these jobs they get, they receive a lump of money that are used to pay salaries and bonuses. Bonuses are a very important part of the Wagner attraction. They're highly paid, and they get significant bonuses. That money comes from the Ministry of Defense, but the company makes its profit not on the salaries and the bonuses, but on the deals it cuts with the other countries, side security jobs, things of that nature. And Wagner had some very lucrative, side businesses in Africa. Putin alluded to it today when he spoke about Prigozhin. The estimated value of these side businesses, a couple $1 billion a year. This is big league stuff. This isn't minor. This is major money-making potential for this company. And that money was going into Prigozhin's pocket. How do you think he afforded that mansion? Going into other commanders and other civilian investors. There's a whole network of companies involved in this. And after July, when Putin came out and said, yeah, I said I don't want him to be, this is the guy, the Russian government started going and taking over these companies, taking over these things. Because remember, in July, another thing that happened was the Russian-Africa Summit, a big deal. All the African leaders came to St. Petersburg, where they met with Putin, and Putin began to redefine Russia's relationship with the African continent, meaning that now Africa was part of the overall geopolitical design that Russia had. This is again a very big deal, major league stuff. Russia is revamping its approach to Africa, which means that all of the important economic connectivity that Wagner's had with Africa starting in, say, 2015, 2016, 2017, that's going to be taken over by the Russian government. The Russian government is no longer distracted by other things. They're now going to get out there and they're going to play. And so what the Russian government told Wagner is, hey, we still want to work with you, but you're going to be under our umbrella now. You're going to be responsive to us, which means, yet again, I don't know, did I just get cut off again? Or
No, you're good. You're good.
My computer is doing weird things. Wagner is not happy. And that's a shame, because I actually, I've met with Wagner members. I've met with senior Wagner members, and I respect them tremendously. I think I met with them before the insurrection, and while I've always, and I told them this too, I said, I just don't know how to deal with private military contractors doing work that is normally associated with the government. In America, mercenaries like Blackwater and companies like that, they don't take oaths to the United States. They work for the company. They work for the dollar. They don't work for America. But Wagner was different. These are deeply patriotic men who believe that they are there to serve Russia. They're just serving Russia in a different contract vehicle. But so it's not that I have anything against Wagner. I just believe that you don't commit treason against your commander in chief and get away with it. But Putin, they started taking over the Wagner businesses. They started, bringing it under control. And what does Prigozhin do? He's supposed to be in Belarus in exile. And instead, and I just want to point out, there was somebody on my Telegram channel earlier chastising me and bragging about how people had intervened with me earlier to keep my dog from barking on air. Come on, buddy, keep barking. Nobody controls my dog. Nobody controls my dog. My dog works for me, and he does whatever the hell he wants to do when he wants to do it. And if you don't want to hear him barking, click. I'm just in a bad mood. I'm not in a mood to play around with anybody. But anyways, yeah, normally I have better sense of humor than this, but you don't pick on my dog. But the thing is that, Prigozhin was carrying out a shadow summit. And I'm watching that going, what the living hell is this guy up to? Putin's up there doing grand diplomacy, doing this big league stuff. Africa came to him, and Africa's responsive to Russia, and Russia's posturing to do things, including in the security field, which means it has to be managed under the umbrella of the Russian presidential administration. And there's Prigozhin, a traitor, down in St. Petersburg, meeting with these people afterwards, cutting side deals. Do you understand how stupid that is? How utterly stupid, but it's an act of desperation because Prigozhin was seeing his empire crumble, his sources of income drying up, and he was desperate to take advantage of relationships that went back, for instance, the Central African Republic to 2016. So he was down there cutting side deals saying, hey, remember me? We're there. We'd like to keep this thing going and all that stuff. And the African leaders are going, oh yeah, we're not going to. So he's screwing the Russian government. And this is in July. So now the next thing that happens that's big is Niger blows up. I mean, I think, Danny, you're a smart geopolitical analyst. You understand that if a war breaks out in Niger between ECOWAS and Niger, with Burkina Faso and Mali supporting Niger, and ECOWAS getting French support, and Wagner fighting on behalf of Niger, we have the potential for basically World War III starting in Africa. And the consequences of this are dire, not only in terms of conflict, but just imagine for a second what happens when this war starts. Do you think there's going to be tens of millions of people displaced? Perhaps. Of course they will. And where are they going to go? Across the Sahel to where? To North Africa. And from where? To Europe. And Europe is saturated. They have no more tolerance or room for refugees. So now you have a global crisis at the time when Russia is getting ready to defeat the Ukrainian army. I believe in the next month or so, you're going to see the Ukrainian army precipitously withdraw behind the Dnieper River because they have no more troops left. And when they do that, millions of Ukrainians are going to head to the Polish border. And the Poles are going to say, we ain't taking them anymore. Now Europe is going to be attacked on both sides by literal armies of migrants that have no place to go in desperation. This is a sort of a global changing thing taking place here, and it's a big deal. And you know what Russia doesn't want in the middle of this? Some greedy private military contractor running around cutting side deals that place personal profit ahead of the national security interest. And yet there is Prigozhin doing just that. He is flying to Mali, cutting side deals. Now, if you study patterns of behavior, and this is one of the things I used to do for as a living, study patterns of behavior, see if people are lying to me, to see what they're doing, see if I should be suspicious. Ask the Iraqis why they could never get away from hiding weapons of mass destruction from me, because I'm pretty damn good at what I do. And so I'm watching Prigozhin, and he does this video out of Mali. I'm going, why is he doing this video? What is the purpose of this video? Why is he in Mali wearing brand new, straight out of the box, desert camouflage uniform, holding an automatic weapon? He's my age, and he's dressed like he's going into combat, holding an automatic weapon stacked up with all the ammunition clips and the whole thing. And he's making a statement about Wagner's here. Why? Who's he trying to impress? I mean, if Wagner had the support of the African governments, he doesn't need to do this video. If Wagner had the support of the Russian government, he doesn't need to do this video. The fact of the matter is, he is trying to win over Russian public opinion. He's speaking in Russian. This video was released on his Telegram channel, and it's supposed to be consumed by Russians who are saying Wagner is in Africa. Wagner will save the day, so that when Prigozhin makes his public pitch, however he would plan on doing that, was he going to do another March of Justice? That's what he called his last coup d'etat. But the bottom line is he's in there stirring up trouble, and it gets on a plane. And he flies back to Russia, a place he's not supposed to be, by the way. Remember, he was sent off to Belarus. So now he shows up in Russia. Who's on the airplane with him? There's two plane loads. One plane load has another group of senior Wagner people. We don't know who's on that airplane, but we can guess. The other plane has him, his head logistics guy who handles all the contracts in Africa, all the business dealings. So as the business empire is collapsing around him, Prigozhin is asking new Russian investors to come in. He's been doing that for the last month, calling people up saying, invest, invest, invest. I need this money. So he has his contracts guy there who's probably coming from Africa with fresh contracts that the Russian government does not approve of, by the way. They're coming in to set up meetings to create trouble for the Kremlin. So that guy's on board. He has four longtime Africa hands from Wagner, guys with distinguished histories, heroes all, who are his personal security detail. These are the guys, these are the bodyguards. And that's an important fact, because I'm going to bring that back to you in just a second. And they're on the plane together with two pilots and a 39-year-old flight attendant. And the plane blows up and hits the ground, and they're all dead. I believe they're all dead, and I believe Prigozhin's dead because the Russian president delayed his presentation to the Russian people until which time he got confirmation that Prigozhin was, in fact, on that plane and dead. I know they haven't released the body and all that. The Russian president does not get ahead of the news. Anybody who's been studying Putin understands he doesn't get ahead of the news. He will speak when the facts are available, and the facts are Prigozhin's dead. So now the big thing is, did Putin kill him? That's the big question, $1 million question. And Putin, on surface, has every reason to kill him. I just outlined a case where Prigozhin not only was a traitor, but is doing things that could be deemed not to be in the interest of the Russian government. Putin has said that he could forgive anything but betrayal, and Prigozhin betrayed him. So a lot of people have to go, Putin did it. Let me give you a couple of reasons why Putin didn't do it. And I firmly believe that Putin didn't do it. We'll start with reason number one. 39-year-old, I think her name is Katerina, but I'm not going to butcher her name, but the flight attendant. You know, Vladimir Putin, and I just did an interesting interview with Vladimir Solovyov, a very contentious, controversial person, but sort of the most influential journalist in Russia today, who knows Putin very well. And he said that Putin isn't like any other politician in the world. And what he means by that is, you know, in the United States, we know for a fact that when an American president is presented with a crisis, they have to ensure that it's spun in a way that's politically beneficial for them. There is not an American president or politician out there that says, I'll take the hit, boys, spin it, factually accurate. I'm going down with the ship. This is my bad. How do we spin? How do we lie? The cover up is always greater than the crime, we're told, but they all cover up because none of them are honest. Putin, it's not that he doesn't care what people think about him, but according to Vladimir Solovyov, and it's something that I agree with, Putin places Russia and the Russian people above everything else. That everything he does is for the benefit of Russia and the Russian people. And he genuinely cares about Russia and the Russian people. And the idea that this compassionate man who literally does everything for Russia and the Russian people would wholeheartedly murder an innocent woman and two pilots is beyond comprehension. Now, there's people out there who hate Vladimir Putin and say, of course he can do that. He blew up a building to start the Chechen war. He's a murderer. He's this. He's none of that. None of that. There's no evidence to support anything that anybody says about him other than he puts Russia and the Russian people first. So right off the bat, that's a hurdle that can't be crossed in my mind. Now, one thing that can happen is people can say, well, we think Putin would be better off if this happened. To give you an example, Boris Nemtsov was Putin's nemesis, opposition leader causing Putin problems. But Putin really didn't care about it because at the end of the day, he looked at Nemtsov's popularity and he went, I got him beat. I'm not worried about this. But Nemtsov was a pain in the neck. And he was killed. He was killed by Chechens. And what I understand is the order came from somebody who thought that he was doing Vladimir Putin a favor by ordering this hit. And it turned out that Vladimir Putin was incensed by this, furious by this. And that relationship suffered greatly because of this, because Putin doesn't do that. Putin isn't a murderer. That's not the tools he used. I don't care what William Browder or anybody else says. He doesn't operate that way. So, but the thing is it possible that somebody said, I know the boss isn't ordering this, but I think the boss will appreciate this. Let's take the guy out. And here's the thing. The list of people who would like to kill Prigozhin is long, and it is diverse. It's not just Russians, but foreigners all want him dead. And the only thing that protected Prigozhin was Vladimir Putin's relationship with him. That made him untouchable. And Vladimir Putin's relationship with him was broken so much that Putin said, I want Prigozhin gone. I want him replaced with Troshin. And so that lends itself to the possibility that somebody did something thinking Putin would want that to happen. But the timing of this is atrocious. I mean, if you want to take out Prigozhin, you don't blow him up over a Western Russian city in broad daylight in the middle of a BRICS conference where Russia is trying to assert itself as a responsible member of the world, a leader of the world. Now what? Putin's assassinating people he doesn't like? It's stupid. So nobody with any head on their shoulder would have timed it this way if this was a deliberate act. And I know there's people investigating whether or not there was a bomb placed on the airplane. Again, that requires a level of conspiracy and collaboration that is beyond imagination. How do you get explosives into Sheremetyevo? How do you get the person to put it in? The plane's guarded. I know the flight attendant said something about maintenance, but people tried to blow that out of proportion. But actually, when you read what she wrote, there was nothing unnormal about it. She said, no, the plane's being maintained. We're just waiting here until it comes back. She didn't say it was different and suspicious. This thing has to be investigated. Good forensics will be able to get in there and determine it. But here's what I think happened, because I don't believe in conspiracy theories, especially when the causal relationships generated by it run counter to the intent, like blowing up an airplane during BRICS. Nobody friendly to Putin would do that, and I don't believe any enemy of Prigozhin who is supporting Putin would do that. Is there a possibility the British did it, the French did it? That's an act of war. That's sort of a big deal. And why there? You can get him anywhere you want. Prigozhin just flew in from Mali, a combat zone, with his personal security detail. If you look at the video of the plane on the ground, you hear popping sounds. That's ammunition going off. I've heard it before. It's ammunition popping off because of the heat. Somebody had weapons on that airplane. Somebody had ammunition on that airplane. Somebody had high explosives on that airplane. I don't know if that airplane was, rated to carry it, but he had a personal security detail, 4 guys who carry automatic weapons, and they carry the ammunition. They probably carry some pyrotechnics, maybe some grenades. That was loaded on the airplane, and I believe that it was not loaded properly, and I believe that that probably is what caused the airplane to crash, a malfunction with ammunition on board. It's the only thing that makes sense, to be honest with you. Because if Putin wanted Prigozhin dead, he could have killed him in any number of ways that wouldn't have been so high profile at the absolute wrong time to be doing this. Putin would prefer the world would be talking about BRICS and 6 new members and the role Russia played in transforming the multipolar world. That's what he wanted to talk about. That's what he wanted high on the agenda. He doesn't want everybody talking about Prigozhin and doing little whisper things behind everybody's back. I believe that this was a tragic accident. And people say, well, they're professionals. The United States Marine Corps is professional too. And we had a C-130 blow up in the middle of the air because Marines, professionals from Force Recon or Raider Battalion, put ammunition on there incorrectly, and it went pop in midair and killed everybody. Bad things happen. And I think in this situation, when you're in Africa in a war zone, your security detail is armed to protect you from potential harm, especially when you have British talking about creating Ukrainian hit squads. You're going to fly over and kill African leaders in Prigozhin. That these guys had sufficient weaponry to do what's necessary to protect their high value person. They put that on an airplane, and I think that they made a mistake. And I think that something went wrong, and I think the airplane blew up, and I think this was just a tragic accident, a tragic accident. And I hope the investigation proves it. That way we put an end to all this conspiracy nonsense. If Putin wanted Prigozhin dead, Prigozhin would have been dead a long time ago in a way that didn't even have a chance of coming back to Putin. I don't think that the either MI6 or CIA or French intelligence has the capacity to do something like this, nor do I believe they see anything good coming out of it, because if it ever gets back to them, and remember, none of these guys are really that good, they would get caught. That's an act of war. That's an act of war to come into Russia, to Moscow, and blow up Prigozhin over. It's an act of war, and the cost-benefit analysis that has to be done for something like that doesn't pay off. There's no payoff for that. Not if the potential outcome is nuclear conflict. So I don't think they did it. I don't think the GRU assassinated this guy, because the GRU is in the midst of a major transformation, shifting Wagner from a private military company into a entity working for the Ministry of Defense. This is very disruptive to that effort. You want the Wagner people to willingly participate in this. You don't want to create fractures within Wagner, so the timing is horrible. So the bottom line is, through a process of elimination, you take all the conspiracy off the table, and you're left with a four-man security detail, put ammunition, weaponry, and high explosives on an airplane. They didn't do it properly, and that stuff went boom, and tragically, everybody died. That's where I think happened here. But again, we are way early in this process, and we just don't know.
Wow. Yeah, no, you gave, I think that really runs down the possibilities. And, as you were talking, I was thinking also about the possibilities of like the collective West being behind it, maybe Ukraine having a role. But at the same time, Ukraine and the collective West have been attempting sabotage and terrorist attacks on Russian soil throughout this whole conflict, and the vast majority of them have been absolutely pitiful. That's kind of how I think. I mean, this was if this were their work, it would be just a wildly successful attack that we just haven't seen on record in Ukraine.
It sort of rules it out. Rules it out. Wait a minute, it worked? It couldn't have been the CIA, because they always screw it up. But here it's like, wait a minute, it worked? Had to be an accident.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.